This is just a part number 2. There is just something I need to correct in respect to home for elderly people, in respect to a wooden hood, which is located right across the stream, and in respect to financial matters of home for elderly people, such as banking during the so-called Yugoslavia, Greater Serbian Chetnik state. This here was involved in MK Ultra. I was trying to find names of the companies, but basically everything was one company, bank in the Yugoslavia. Everything went through the central bank. Yugoslavia was a socialist country, that's what they claim. They didn't have anything available that I could. I also don't have I don't have the I'm just gonna see this here. I don't want to bother myself with these fuckatarders. They are afraid, ashamed, disgusted with themselves so much, so that on a simple Jugoslovanska banka v Sloveniji, Jugobanka, Ljubljanska banka, etc., they would not list these banks. And I'm not going to go and do science work on a Serbian Greater Chetnik state, Yugoslavia. I will not do that. For the love of Robert Golob and Milan Kučan, I'm not going to be wasting time here. It's like this. Mateja Jerić, a present director from Home for Elderly in Novo Mesto, witnessed partially this stuff, but the older ladies have seen it all. Mateja Jerić was a young, rosy young girl when I met her first. She was at the Home for Elderly People. Rosy young woman, not girl. And this is the facility here. I think that Mateja Jerić was already working at Home for Elderly People when she was just high school, you know. I think that I believe that she was doing what is known as a pripravniško. I think that she was at the home already when she was a rose young girl. I even believe that she had relatives inside in there, because they would have these young girls, student girls, that would come to Home for Elderly People to see how it is, and she just happened to be one of them. And so what she witnessed was rather gruesome. That was known as Jugobanka. Let's see, you get this. Jugobanka. And then there was there was other banka, all kinds of banka from Serbia, originale. Belgrade, Velika Serbia banka. I'm going to explain to you what kind of a banka this was. I have to explain to you a little bit about this Slovenian. I told you the Slovenes are not a nation This Slovenia is the most northern Serbian canton. I told you about that. It's a disgrace. A regular disgrace is what this is. And so you want to make it big, we're going to make it big. And then you have a Belgrade here. And this home for elderly people. What they will do is burachiki. Like a regular fucking drunks, losers, scum, filth. They were initially tied to this, I think it was a Jugobanka. It must have been from the Belgrade. The Belgrade controlled this national companies, especially like a home for elderly people. They had to go through the Jugobanka, I think. It was all the Serbs that... It was a big war with these banks when it comes to also home for elderly people. I remember how this scum from Belgrade would travel to Slovenia, literally to home for elderly. And it was as if I worked, as if I was employed at home for elderly people, thus having Serbs torture me at home for elderly people and taking me to Belgrade for torture, but basically making themselves brazen, plain in the face of the old director of home for elderly people, in the face of the administration. You know, these people at home for elderly people are all Serbs. There's not a single Slovenian that works inside of the administration. Not single fucking one of them. To so slovenski Srbini, slovenski Srbi su tu. These are Serbian fascists that are employed inside of this home for elderly people that would really enjoy torture. It reminded a lot of the court in the city of the Novo Mesto. It tremendously reminded the court in the city of the Novo Mesto. They were doing, Burachiki were doing whatever was good for them to do, whatever they wanted to do, anything was allowed to do. And so what they were doing is they were demonstrating a total disregard for the law, total disregard for the pain, for the suffering, physical, mental torture. This is what this facility, home for elderly people, was. And so they had this Jugoführers, Serbs, coming at this home for elderly people. And it was this national bank from Yugoslavia that they would have to deposit the money to. You know? And then through assistance of the Slobodan Milošević, a good friend of the Josip Broz Tito, which is kind of strange, no? He supposedly belonged to that other fraction of people which would go into the... Well, yes and no. A good friend of the Josip Broz Tito, Slobodan Milošević. Slobodan Milošević wanted to kill Josip Broz Tito. But anyhow, maybe not, maybe yes. I don't know why Tito would not remove him. Tito was not stupid, if that would be the thing. I think Josip Broz Tito and Milošević were quite good friends. You know, everybody talked that Slobodan Milošević tried to kill Josip Broz Tito. No, Josip Broz Tito regretted the Serbian loss of Kosovo, and he regretted the existence of the Bosnian people in Bosnia. He was certain that he made damage to the Serbs in Bosnia and damage to the Serbs in Kosovo. So he alone felt like he needs to depart. and his successor was a Slobodan Milosevic. And the truth is, the two were friends. So, because Slobodan Milosevic was doing something really, really ugly, he commenced ethnic cleansing and killing people in Kosovo and in Bosnia, and he absolutely tried to kill me. I don't know about Slovenia, what he supposedly would do. I don't understand people like this, and it's not my business to understand people like this, you know. They don't stand up for themselves. Why should anybody else stand up for them? It is just as simple as this. So, Slobodan Milosevic presented alternative to the most violent people from the Belgrade, to which this home for elderly people were paying the money. They had to deposit the money every month from the retirement, from the people, from the retirees in this home. And that was the main bank. I don't know, Narodna Banka Yugoslavia, National Bank of Yugoslavia, whatever the fuck it was. And Milosevic was the one who presented alternative to this bank sometimes like in 1982. And the torture consequently was reduced. It was impossible to describe these animals from Belgrade. The people, they are not. The people, these are not. I wouldn't even regard them as animals. Impossible to describe what went on during Yugoslavia, what I was delivered to the Belgrade. Impossible to describe. Impossible. They had, together with the people like Borut Pahor, Slovenes, with the Slovenski Serbi, Robert GOLOB, Milan Kučan, they had agreement. And the agreement was that next to the money that Slovenia had to pay, also I had to be tortured, physically tormented, tortured. And Home for Elderly People in Novo Mesto embraced this. Entire administration department from Home for Elderly People with the workers, since I was a baby, they embraced this technology. They wanted it that way. They participated, and overall they incited in it. They were in it, incited in it, cooperated with direct abductions to the Serbia, to the Belgrade. This was my childhood. It was not hectic, it was not traumatic, it was genocidal. It was determined to kill, to turn me into a patient. That's what this Home for Elderly People, Slovensky, that's what they were for. This is what Slovenes are. The purpose was extermination procedure. They're gonna have to explain about this Jugoslovanska Narodna Banka, Slovenski Srbini. Boste morali povedati, svinje slovenske, kaj ste delali. That's one thing. Milosevic presented them a new bank. Milosevic wanted to sort of privatize this Yugo system. And he was working underground as a main UDBA individual, truly as an alternative as of Josip Broz Tito, and presented with his circle of people what were some semi-private banks. And for me to get that private bank, Milosevic demanded for me to be more tortured, to be more, so that I would get rid of that older Jugobanka, this Yugoslav, Narodna Jugoslovanska Banka. So they would change the bank, which was totally unheard of. Those are the partisans from Belgrade who wanted to kill me at all the costs. These are the closest associates of the Josip Broz Tito, whom Josip Broz Tito had used to get me killed. So in 1982, 1981 maybe, Home for Elderly changed into some kind of a semi-private bank, Yugoslav Serbian bank. It was still from the Serbia, maybe it was a Jugobanka, I don't know what the fuck it was. You know, if they would at least list the fucking names of these banks they had in Yugoslavia, but like I said, I'm not gonna go and research this garbage. The papers are gonna demonstrate they changed the bank in 1982 for something else, you know? And so more torture took place, still this transition took place, because Milosevic learned all about these partisans, you know, Reds, communists, leftists. He learned all about them. And I say this because Chinese did not condemn this scum, these ethnic cleansers, these murderers, genocidal garbage from Serbia and from Slovenia. You did not, because they wear the red star, for you they were good. And it didn't matter what the fuck they were doing. That's why I say Reds, communists, leftists, etc., etc. They were, and they were directly partisans. They were partisans, same as my grandfather was, who carried the head on the tray throughout entire World War II, placing at the risk his entire family that could be deported at any time, and one time already was at a train station. They could be deported at any time to Dachau, to Auschwitz, for extermination procedure. They were partisans the same way as brother of my mother, who was killed in a battle with the Germans, or the mother from my mother, and mother is siblings who were all enrolled in a communist, in a partisan movement during the World War II. So maybe we were more partisans than this scum from Belgrade, more sacrifice for Yugoslavia, just so that I would be handled. Well, you don't even handle the animals, the cattle, like this. So this is about the Chinese Communist Party. You knew about these things. You knew absolutely about both sides of my family. And yet you supported this Serbian ethnic cleansing in the name of the Red Star, in the name of the better world under the communism. You like that. You embraced them, you supported them. You supported the Russians, you supported the Serbs in doing this in completely other country to somebody totally not related to them. That's one thing. The second thing about this stuff is they were taking, the police was coming, and they were taking the money from Home for Elderly People. Milosevic personally was visiting Home for Elderly People, just as I explained. And I think they were also stealing the money from Home for Elderly People. There was money that was stolen from Home for Elderly People. On a private account, on a private way, money disappeared from Home for Elderly People, which was a normal habit of Slobodan Milosevic. Slobodan Milosevic was doing the same shit with the IMV, Industrija motornih vozil, and with the Tovarna Krka, with the factory Krka. Basically, IMV is Renault. Now it's a Renault. It used to be IMV. They were coming and they were collecting the envelopes, corruption. Yeah, this is the way it was in Yugoslavia. Police did collect the money from Home for Elderly People and transported one, if we go back from here, and transported one on a monthly basis, once per month, into this bank here. There was a bank. The first, there was some kind of a bank. This is a bank here in the center of the city. Suppose that this was not a bank. The one who was totally familiarized with this stuff. Yeah, the one who was completely familiarized with this banking, in a parenthesis, banking procedures, was none other than Robert Golob, who was actually even correcting me about where exactly this money was transported to. Robert Golob, Gregor Golobic. So this is a banka here, NLB it's called, Nova Ljubljanska Banka. Maybe this one even started to take, came in effect. It's now known as New Ljubljanska, Nova Ljubljanska Banka. Maybe 2 years before the fall of the Yugoslavia. Maybe this one came in effect in 1988, maybe something like that, but I do not think so. They had 2 other banks, just as I explained, and police was taking the money to these banks. Supposedly, they were taking this once per month, and Robert Golob claimed they were never taking any kind of money absolutely anywhere from Home for Elderly People. That they were never ever taking. They were never ever taking any kind of money. The thing is, they were stealing the money. The Home for Elderly People director, who was employed in Yugoslavia, the administration, entire administration, knows that Serbs, with assistance of the police, they would steal the money. They would steal thousands of Deutschmarks worth of money per month even. Whenever there was a money that was inside of the budget of the Home for Elderly People, there was a male guy inside in there. They were using him to telephone Serbs on the side, the Serbian police. They would keep the money in the treasure, and whenever this guy would learn about this money, yeah, this is the business of Milan Kučan, yeah, this is a Milan Kučan, Robert Golob, Borut Pahor, yes. He would let the police know about it, police would come at order of Slobodan Milosevic and confiscate the money. And what it followed was see nothing, hear nothing, know nothing from director from Home for Elderly People, that's correct. I remember the lady with the black hair, shorter, with the glasses, at Home for Elderly People, who was a swine, was doing this kind of stuff. That people inside of this administration, Slovenski Serbi, they were stealing the money from the Slovenes that were paying the money, where the people were working abroad or whatever. Sometimes they would compensate in a foreign currency and so on. They would be stealing this money. This money would never arrive to any bank. This money would never arrive anywhere. It seems like they were writing off this money through basically workers that were employed inside of the home. And so if you have one number more or you have another number more or less, whatever it is, whichever way they say that he compensated for whatever month, that's what the fuck they were doing. They were stealing money inside of this Home for Elderly People. And the one who was doing this kind of stuff, well, these animals right here that you see inside of this bunker here, they built for themselves already in Yugoslavia. They were the inheritors, I told you, who continued the legacy of Slobodan Milosevic and continue to enforce the legacy of Slobodan Milosevic, who were doing this kind of stuff and who continue to enforce crime afterwards. Now, Robert Golob claimed that they never did this stuff, that there never was a police, and there never was this. Any time when there was a budget, there was some money in a hard currency that appeared at Home for Elderly People, you would have this scum here driving with their stojadin to the Home for Elderly People to collect the money. That's the way they did this. This is who did it. This is how they did it. This is if they did it. And then there is another issue that I need to end. And that's the issue pertaining to this hood here. I told you, this hood. This is the hood right here. I told you about how they calculated they're gonna smash this hood down. Here. This kind of stuff. This hood, I made a mistake in this video. I'm gonna demonstrate you the video. Because I stated that he built this hood. He did not build this hood. He purchased the hood someplace in some store. At that time, the Merkur, which is selling this kind of a hoods, did not exist. Even they brainwashed my brain on Merkur in Yugoslavia. Slovenski Srbini. They cry here how there will be some Merkur that will fall down. Tergovska hiša Merkur and so on. I don't think that they had this kind of a hoods. They had other products inside in there. I don't think they were selling this kind of hoods, but you know, maybe he bought it over there. I don't know. I think it was another company in Yugoslavia. Unfortunately, just like is the case with the banks, they don't tell the names of the companies that existed because everything was the state company, country company, not the state, but country, Belgrade. Everything was Belgrade. Everything went through the Belgrade, everything. So they don't tell about which companies in Slovenia, Yugo companies they had, but I think there was one more company that would sell this kind of stuff. So I don't think it was Merkur. I think it was another one that he purchased this hood. I made a mistake because I stated, oh well, he built this hood. He could, you know, he could, but I remember those days. Those were ugly cheap, you know, maybe not even so cheap, really. He just decided that he's gonna buy one, and he placed this hood right here. And yes, I believe the year was 1983. It was just a transition, I would even say, or maybe even 19, you know, it was a transition, sorry, it was a transition between the grammar school into a high school. And so I think that was like 1985, maybe it was even 1985, okay? I'll give you the over there somewhere, 1985, you know, let's say 1985, something like this, 1984, 1985, 1986, let's say. Yeah, he had me there when he placed that stuff down. Sorry, I absolutely made a mistake. It was earlier than that. 1983, 1982 it was. Yeah, because it was still that it was a more important, bigger transition. It was a transition between us heading to a new house here in Novo Mesto, where we stayed already for a little bit, and like 2 years, and so that would be like 1982, 1983, 1982, 1983 would be this stuff here. 2 years older daughter than myself. Good looking, blue-eyed girl. I was really interested in that. It just didn't work out, but they had brides like this through this entire Gurham area. In fact, really yesterday I met one of those brides also with her husband, also from the same area. You see, the area that you see here is not too far from our home here, old home in Novo Mesto city. We used to live here not too far at these are animals. These are not even people. Sorry that I cannot consider this as a people. These are regular animals. Sorry, there's no fucking way I'm gonna consider this as a people. It's a garbage. They refer to Romani people in Slovenia as a Cigani. Well, the biggest Cigoti, the biggest Cigani in Slovenia are Slovenes. There's no bigger. Ciganaria, that translates into Slovenes. Slovenski, Slovens, Cigo. Ciganaria, Cigan, to Slovenia. Not Romani, not the Romi people, but Slovenci. Cigoti. That will be this here. This is all practically the same area. That's 3 minutes from my home to this location is 1.4 kilometers. You know, not very likely that I would absolutely not go in that direction because I had school. My school was right here. what the fuck I did. This was Tardinova 4, and I had no business to be there. This was my life here. Nobody was interested in going to that location. So my school was right here. That's a school that was 180 meters from home, from our home. And the city is not in this direction. The city is in this direction, is in an opposite direction from home for elderly people. It's a fucking ugly place. That the only time I would come here near this home for elderly people would be visiting the grave of my grandfather, which is right next to the home for elderly people, as family grave basically. That's all there is. Otherwise, I wouldn't come anywhere close to the home for elderly people. And that I would come with the parents. We moved from here when I was just, I don't know, like I said, 1982, so that I know that he placed this hut across the stream in 1984. In 1984, maybe even 1985, because it was also a little bit transition between the grammar school into a high school. So I remember that stuff. So maybe he bought it in Mercur. I don't think so. I think that he bought it somewhere else. There was another company, something that they had, and that's what I think that he bought it. That was the so-called Socialist Republic of the Yugoslavia. No, the Chinese knew about all this stuff, that this was regular swinery, and did express compassion for me, but did not go to do what they should have done it, and that's basically condemning Serbs and Slovenes directly in the face. They didn't have what it takes to protect life of the human being. Simple as this. And not go out and say, hey, it doesn't matter if we are a communist state. What matters is your unethical procedure against this guy here. And what we see here is a classic of the ethnic cleansing. It is simple as this, which would be a problematic thing if they would declare that kind of stuff, of course, because it was a Yugoslavia. But once it became independent Slovenia, there was actually no excuse for that. Chinese instead suggested me, come to China, escape from there, come to China, come to us. So this is the way it is. In a capitalism, countries condemn each other if it's something that had to do with the ethnic cleansing, with the genocide. They don't hold it back. There is organizations that exist, people that exist that condemn each other. In a communism, nothing ever comes out. It's like you lock the ugliest thing that can happen to the human being into a magic box that nothing ever comes out. In fact, they were certain, very, very certain, that this here is going to be my facility right here next door. And that's for the mentally disabled people. They were sure, they were certain they're going to brain kill me. They were certain they're going to brain kill me. They were certain that I am never going to make it, even that I will not even make it to this facility. This here, this is one disgusting. This nothing is more disgusting in this place here than this here. This is the most disgusting thing this here. The most disgusting. And Mateja Jeric have seen this shit. She appeared, was horrified from the beginning. But then at the same time, he also sympathized, he expressed sympathies with the stuff that went on. And this was a really rosy young girl. I remember her. I think that she was doing here pripravništvo, and there's a possibility that she had a relative here, that she was coming here to visit. Because she kept coming here to visit. And there was other girls that would keep coming to visit. Mateja Jeric was more conservative. It appeared like she cared for me, That's what this shit is all about. That's what, you know, Robert Golob insisted that there never was, that if I will say, you know, that if I will say that it was Serbs that were coming to collect the money here and transfer one to the bank, it would be a schizophrenia, it would be a schizophrenia. And yesterday as I walked, and it's audio recorded, as I walked past here, as I went to the reception, everybody was looking at me strange when I started to talk about this topic. It was extremely loud. Ha, 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 ha. A lady that was laughing her ass out to remind me, if you will say that it was the police that were coming in Yugoslavia, during Yugoslavia, to collect the money, it will be a schizophrenia. He never did, and so on and so forth. So this is the way it was in the Yugoslavia. Home for elder care po jugoslovansko, po slovensko-srpsko. Explained everything in 2025, and look at that, man. They wanted to make them so smart, they wanted to make them so strong, they wanted to look like a decent people, when in fact they're fucking animals. They always were animals, and they always will be animals. The further that you dig with this shit, the more you are in shit. And I'm talking about the Slovenes, talking about the Aleš Hojs, talking about the Lojze Peterle, talking about the Janez Janša. I'm talking about all the people who came to a resolution, to solution, that somehow, if I would not, that it would be a leftist that would take over the government. Because it's all the same shit. The further you guys go, the more shit, the more bolj ste podrekani. Dlje ko gre, bolj ste z drakom poflakani. I remember the guy who had either son, I think, or whoever in Germany, and they were paying in Deutschmarks to this place here. And that's what Milosevic, that's what the Serbs were coming here to collect. And they had a male guy, and they had this accounting lady, was a lady with a black hair, dark hair, that worked there. She looked like a Serb anyways, and that was the kind of stuff that she prompted. The telephone, and they would come, the boys in blue, to collect it. For the Milosevic. Gnoj ste, totalni gnoj ste. The further it goes, the better you guys look for what you are, for what you really were, and for what you are. Much more important issue than what I initially anticipated the case would be. So this is part number 2 of police challenge with a future storm issue, which I went on to investigate and proven beyond any doubt. They did cut that tree right there. I don't know about the rest of it, I don't give a fuck. But that tree, they did cut the tree.
Okay, I'm going to give you...
They cut this tree, they prepared this tree to fall down already. Who knows how many years ago they prepared this tree to cut this tree down. I remember, I'll not forget, when they inspected the tree thoroughly, and even gestured me in 2008 that they had done something to the tree and so on, with tree to which they would continue to come back to check on the tree, and so on. How, when they did with this tree, what happened, I don't know. There was a storm in Novo Mesto, and that tree probably was the tree that was just waiting to fall down. It was done in such a way that, you know, the tree itself, the way it is, it's enclosed, it's in a barrier. You cannot get to that tree. You cannot get close to that tree because it's a fence, you know.
I'm going to give you a complete breakdown of this house. This is one of the
There is a fence right there that blocks you from getting anywhere close to the tree, just like I demonstrated you here. As you can see that when I go down, here as I go, there is a fence here. You know, if you pay attention, there is a fence, and then there is a tree. There is no access to that tree. But the way the police did this shit was they did this in such a way that, from what I recall, because they also deliver me to see that tree, that you could see the roots in the water from that mighty giant tree. You could see that powerful tree the way it was. So the way they did this, I assume they have done something already, you know, outside, whatever it is, so that as it was leaning toward that hood over there on the other side, that, you know, it would be just a matter of the technicality when that tree would collapse down. And the tree did collapse down during the visit of Robert Golob to the city of the Novo Mesto. This is at least what they post with the photos. They made a show that he was here, and during his visit that this is what took place. Mateja Yerich from Home for Elderly People insisted during MKL that I would be the one who would be talking about the weather modification procedures. I'm not interested in talking about that stuff. We already spoke about that stuff, for which she, with the Robert Golob, insisted would contribute to the global stability in respect to deliberate weather modification procedures. So what they were looking is, they were looking forward to a lot of conspiracy theories. They wanted to boost the conspiracy theories. I'm not into conspiracy theories. I have elderly father that I need to save out of Home for Elderly People. This is my main thing. So Mateja Yericheva and Robert Golob wanted to look like heroes, like a wonder heroes, together with the police station army. So we're going to prove there is a weather modification program and so on and so forth. I'm not interested in that blah blah. They did brainwash that this is going to happen during Robert Golob's visit to the city of the Novo Mesto. They did that kind of stuff. I don't give a fuck about that. People, animals, global, the so-called global activists that I will also investigate and prosecute promptly, were out there together with the British royals, with the Germans, to boost as many as possible all kinds of conspiracy theories that will make this case unsolvable and maybe even insane. They were out there and they advocated this kind of a trash culture. They advocated it for the cost of extermination procedure, for the cost of genocide against somebody, regardless of how much life that would deprive one of. So I'm not interested in whatever Robert Golob, Natasha Pirc-Musar, TANJA FAJON, and Rats, the communists from so-called Slovenia, ex-Yugoslavs, where they want to play conspiracy theories through my case. I don't give a fuck. I don't care. This is not a first storm. It was precalculated already in the past that Slovenes had problems very, very, very similar to the one that was visible here, not, or maybe even to this degree, in exactly this same area. These photos were taken not too far from the area which affected Home for Elderly People also. They did have storms before. The storms did take place, and this is none of my business. My business is to get my father out and to stop 54-year-old extermination procedure, a genocide against me. This is my business. This is my big business. You're not going to change the nature of the genocide into a salvation of the world procedure for the cost of my life. You might say, oh, that's a small thing, one life. Yeah. Well, why don't I go and kill evaporize entire Slovenian nation so that you will have salvation of this world, so that it will be proven that the natural, through the natural disaster, so that it will be proven that there is a weather modification procedure. You bring your own sons and your fathers, talking about the Serbs, northern Serbs, Slovenes, and you fuck with them as much as you like and do with them whatever the fuck you want. But my father is my family and my life is my life, and you took away from me 54 years of life. This is also a message to Berlin. There's also a message to London, to the New York, to the scum, that you just couldn't resist. You just couldn't resist to the fuck of it. You just had to push this all the way without realizing that you boosted ethnic cleansing. You boosted genocide procedure and the stuff that you talk about, the books, how the Stalin did, Tito did, and this and that, without realizing, in a parenthesis, because you did realize, you did all you possibly could to find excuses for those ethnic cleansing and say basically, well, we are the same thing. That's what Trump advocates. We're the same thing, you know. Our people do it too. In our place we do it too. You just couldn't resist, could you? To stop this shit. And you instead push this. In case of my father, all the way to the stomach tube that was attached to his stomach. You just couldn't resist to this stuff. You just don't realize what the fuck you're doing. You don't realize because you don't understand English maybe. You couldn't fucking get what the fuck you're doing. You are more, right? You're interested in more. It was this kind of activist, Greta Thunberg, Edward Snowden, he is in Russia, you know. He was all kinds of activists, all kinds of junkers, garbage, scum, because of whom this case, through see nothing, hear nothing, know nothing, took 54 years, and who even counted will become Julian Assange, messiahs. They will be the one, the revealers, the new heroes, the new wanderers, the new, you know, the saviors. People, this kind of scum that drawn the whole fucking world, pull the whole fucking world behind their fake activism into a total abyss. This is why Donald Trump exists. This is why all this fascism goes on. This is why Israel all does. Because you saw yourself in it and you want world to see you. You don't give a fuck about Gaza. You didn't give a fuck about me. You don't give a fuck about other things. You want the populism. You want popularity. You want to be seen historically as a figures, as somebody, as something, rather than to go to the factory and do your job, right? You go and you turn lives of the people into a fucking nightmare. That's what this is. So that's all I gotta say about this video. Aleš Hojs, Lojze Peterle, Dmitry Rupel, Janez Janša could not resist. They wanted more, but they wouldn't want to give their fathers. They didn't want to give their sons. They didn't want to get themselves in a position. They want to play the war, you know, like an effigy doll. They want to play the doll like this. They want to play a voodoo, you know. They want to do this kind of stuff. They want to use me for this shit. And I want to play smart, strong, stupid, with a communists. Never mind they alone were communists. Never mind they have their IDs. They work for the UDBA like Lojze Peterle did. He was not even registered as a UDBA. There were also people who worked for the UDBA that were not registered as a UDBA. You don't have to be registered as a UDBA, right? Lojze Peterleto. Ni bilo tako, svinja, slovenska. Je bilo tako, prase, smrdljivo slovensko. They, talking about the Slovenes here, they claimed me, talking about BORUT PAHOR, TANJA FAJON, MILAN KUČAN, ROBE GOLOB. It's a very, very sensitive topic, money topic, when it comes to the money topic. They suggested me that, funny how you cannot even see Kučan really other than on two photos with Milosevic. That's kind of crazy. Find this really weird. They suggested me this one here, Milan Kučan, who was at home, an elder home in Novo Mesto all the fucking time, interrogated in front of me, not interrogated, but intimidated me indirectly with accountant from Home for Elderly People. You see, there was an original accountant from Home for Elderly People, which was some lady, which was replaced by the younger lady, which I believe might even be inside of the Home for Elderly People, based on what I have seen. Maybe I get to see her again, but I can sure describe her, what she looked like, unless they lied about that issue too. As these people did nothing in their lifetime, they haven't done nothing other than lied, and steal, and attempted to use me to portray the whole thing as a schizophrenia, as a paranoia. That's what this was about. Also this video. They claimed me that they tried to intimidate that absolutely everything is provable, absolutely everything it can be proven. Robert Golob personally went through the paperwork for the Home for Elderly People. Yeah, this is what Robert Golob will admit, that he personally ransacked together with the Gregor Golobic. Upon the fall of the Yugoslavia, of the greater Serbian Chetnik state, they personally ransacked all the transactions from the Home for Elderly. That's what the Milan Kučan was using, this little pounce, to examine all kinds of side jobs he gave like that. So they went through all the transactions from Home for Elderly People, which the lady, the accountant from Home for Elderly People, had to go through. Using this lady to go through all the transactions, everything. This started sometimes in 1989, where Slobodan Milosevic no longer wanted to steal the money. That was a funny shit. Yeah, and that was related to all kinds of issues. Is Roma, Robert. Roma came inside and the Roma steal it, you know? Roma guy came inside, you know? Roma guy came inside and the Roma guy steal it, right? That's how they tutored, yeah? It was always a Roma guy who somehow managed to climbed the window, came all the way, I don't know what the fuck, they throw him with a parachute from the plane. And he landed at the top of the roof, and then he went inside and he stole the fucking money from the Home for Elderly People. You get the point, what I'm trying to say to you? It was always somebody who came to rob the money at Home for Elderly People. Interesting, no? That much about these cars here that was stopping, the Yugo police that was coming here. They didn't stop here. They stopped on the side. And they also had the cars that were not marked most of the time when they would be coming here. You understand the drill, you understand the song. The one who examined absolutely everything was this guy here. Look, this is the guy. this guy here, like, well, he became a police officer who went all with police department. That's what they used them for. You didn't know that stuff. Well, this bunker here, this Jugo bunker Slovenski, is also used for the accounting stuff. They have the investigation department, and what they do is they borrow them from the Slovenian taxpayers to do this stuff like this, to make sure that in the future it would not look good when the police would appear over there. I'm not looking for the proofs inside of the Home for Elderly People about the stuff that I claim. I'm looking for the stuff, for the proofs about what I claimed and claim and will continue to claim right here in this building. They examined, they investigated entire paperwork that this lady had to go through that replaced the main accountant. There were like 3 accountants. They were using 3 accountants. It was that main lady, and then they were maybe 2 or maybe even 3 other ladies that were doing this accounting stuff in Yugoslavia. And then it was another lady they selected to become successor of that original. Who the fuck knows? Sometimes she became a successor of that lady, I think maybe at Home for Elderly, I don't know. I have no idea. They got on the picture sometimes like in 1986, maybe something like this. For Borut Pahor, the so-called Slovenski predsednik, this animal here, claimed together, he kind of looks surprised, doesn't he? Ooh, he's gonna get a lot of surprises here. He claimed together with the Robert GOLOB that everything is being so accounted for that the home, if I'm gonna make claims like I did, will be used to wipe all the guilt, all the theft of the robberies they did in other sectors. So these guys were certain, together with their comrades, with their Slovenian SS Gestapo in blue uniforms, they were certain that they got to demonstrate actually how Yugoslavia was fehlerfrei. They had no mistakes. There was everything accounted for, the money. So all the thefts they committed themselves to, they will be using Home for Elderly People, that they would actually prove that it was, everything was the way it was. Yeah. So, you know, these guys here, without the Roma people, they would be in trouble, I think, because they had to do something, and they have to use somebody they can blame on. If it comes to Roma, that's what I can say about this here. This is a scum. Scum identical to the one in Belgrade. That's why I said that, well, no, it's not about this stuff only. It's about also other issues. Issues which I discussed in a previous video, at the end of the video, when I explained that this stuff took place in Slovenia, in Yugoslavia, where one could even consider and say, oh yeah, people were doing this kind of stuff so they could prove, you know, that they had bad intentions with me and so on. But this character of this crime was completely different, because it was oftentimes Serbian police in Slovenia which participated with the neighbors of the Home for Elderly People that were involved in this MKLJ. And then it was no longer the Yugoslavia, beginning in 1991, and Slovenes, just as I stated, northern Serbs, the most northern Serbs, continue to enforce this extermination, genocide procedure, even for the cost of my immigration to the Austria, and even for the cost of my immigration to United States of America. So they basically propelled corruption, organized crime into the fucking universe, smashing and crashing entire Western Hemisphere through corruption, to organized crime, criminality. And you want me to call this my nation, my people? Now how the fuck am I gonna do that? I'm gonna make you another claim here in this video because I'm in such a good mood. I did report about this criminal by the name Milutinovic. This is a Serbian guy, alright? And I know so. I have to go. This was a guy who intervened here in the village of the Krka. In our village where I'm from, which is known also as a street. Part of the Novo Mesto city. No? And I did break down about this individual, about the two police officers. I don't know why that name did not come up when it should. And did I properly spell that? Milutinovic. Milutinovic. Filip Milutinovic. Interesting that I don't see the name coming up when I enter the one. Maybe now it's going to come out, yeah, because I did use the soft C. Okay. So that's what this is. He's got relatives right on the other side of the stream. Right here at the Krka. Krka, right at the Teška stream. Exactly where I was at, where I was demonstrating you this here. He's got relatives over there. Shit, I already published that stuff. Right here, as you come across this stream here, at the end where I'm at, and I'm doing this stuff here, where I take the father right down to that toward
From
that
what
stream.
I recall here,
you see? The stream that you see? He's got relatives, this guy here. He is employed here. Serbian. He is Serbian, and I know he is a Serbian because he was allowed to actually use his relatives in MK Ultra simply because they were semi-blonde with the blue eyes. Supposedly during MK Ultra that I liked blonde and blue-eyed people. And this is just simply not one of the Serbian characteristics. But because of the nature of the crime and because of the degree of crime, right, he became encouraged to use his relatives. And so he's got some beautiful Slovenian cousins. If you go here, this is what this is. I did spoke to you in a previous video about this location. Right there is this spot where I was at, right behind those bushes right there, behind this house, which you can see from the video right there. So as you go like this, you go up like this, you go up like this, a little bit more. We're gonna make it. The internet is gonna be good enough. Just as you see that car turned, that's what I'm gonna turn. A few meters away from here, they also live here. They were also involved in MK Ultra. Those were his cousins. Here, in this area, this house is here, this housing here. They were also involved. He proudly was demonstrating his beautiful female cousins with the blue eyes, with the semi-blonde and so on, supposedly interested for me. Because the stuff that he was doing was really, really ugly. And because of the stuff that Serbia was doing was really, really ugly. So, What he was trying to do here in the Krka village was very, very ugly. But it was identified. I never heard from one since. I did send the videos to the police station. They didn't want to know anything about after I identified the 2 police officers' involvement in this case. Pertaining to this case here. So they also live here. There is a lot of proofs because it was a whole city that was involved in this stuff. It was the whole country that was involved in this stuff. It was Maribor and Celje and Novo Mesto and Ljubljana and Bela Krajina and Koper and Portorož in Nova Gorica, etc., etc., etc. All over the place they were enforcing this violence. Slovenes I'm talking about. See nothing, hear nothing, know nothing, pedophilia a lot, pedo good, pedo medo, Belgrade. That's what this is. So yes, they believe that they're gonna wash their guilt for the theft, for the organized crime that I reported about through accounting department. Nobody more. Jugo Banka was definitely one of the banks they were using in this home for elderly people. They were certain that they're gonna wash the stuff and portray the whole thing as a schizophrenia. Nobody counted more on this stuff than Igor Joršić, the funny man Andrei Štefanić, the funny guy. You know, the funny guy. He's so Serb that boy, when I think about this Ogulin and all this stuff that they have inside of this bunker inside, boy, you know, I get fucking mad when I think about these animals. Štefanić was traumatizing my father also with a 3.5-inch hard drive throughout MK Ultra that was, I don't know, 500 gigabytes, stuff like this. This is what I need to buy. This was his specialty. That's why he traumatized my father with a 3.5-inch hard drive, which I continue to decline and acknowledge in front of my father as garbage, which disappointed my father tremendously. Because my father did not understood, he doesn't know about the computer fucking thing. He doesn't even know how to turn the computer on. This old man doesn't know a fucking thing about computers. And he never liked them in the first place. And by just father watching me how I declined this stuff, he didn't understand that there's also 2.5-inch hard drives and stuff like this. That was his special. This funny man Andrei Štefanić is going to have to explain a whole lot of stuff. He did not recall, he did not remember anything when I came to this bunker here. I refuse to refer to this as a police. This is no fucking police station. There's no fucking way to have any police station to exist in this world for any nation. There's no way to have armed enemy dressed up in a police uniform bunkerized over their post as a police station. There's no fucking way. There's no fucking way to have a Milosevic station like this anywhere in the world, wherever you are located. There's no fucking way to recognize stuff like this as a police station. No way in this world. No way.